Hello everyone, this is Show here, and this what if, I want to say, was probably one of the better known what ifs I've seen requested to me, and I actually really did like the idea, because I have not seen one like this anywhere on YouTube, I don't believe. Now that may have changed, but I was about to start recording the Meliodas part, but I went to go change some of my guidelines for my what ifs because of YouTube's whole "if you're not made for kids" thing going on. And if you guys have followed my channel, then you guys know the way I storyboard things and how gruesome I can make some of the fights. Because I actually put very much detail and a more DC style in the fighting. Like how the Punisher would basically break a hand while beating someone to death. Now then, since I am speaking about that, I actually did change some of the guidelines for my videos to where you have to be 13 years and up to view my stuff, which I don't know, understand YouTube being the way that you have to be over 13 or 13 years old to have a YouTube channel anyway, to actually even watch stuff on YouTube, which doesn't make sense to me, because people forget YouTube Kids exist and they just stop using it, which kind of annoys me. Because with the whole COPPA and FCC thing going on right now, if I were to say cool, I can get fined $42,000. Because some mother doesn't want to make sure she knows what her kid is watching on YouTube. Now then, anyways, on a more later note, this is going to be what if Deku had Riddicks abilities. This is my 200 subscriber special. I was checking the guidelines and changing my channel rating to where you have to be 13 years and up to view a video on the ones I just posted. And in doing so, I found out that I labeled my Yu Yu Hakusho Part 19 as Part 18. So I fixed that. Anyways. Deku is born. And whenever Deku is born, the doctors would notice that he has an abnormality in his eyes. Now, they would think that this is his quirk, but while he's in the nursery and the light is shining overhead, they would see that Deku just keeps folding the blanket over his face, covering it. And a lot of the nurses are actually paying attention to Deku because they would always try snatching the blanket away, and he would have actually ripped the blanket in half. So the doctors would immediately think that Deku has a strength quirk and he was born with it. But he does not. The doctors would actually diagnose Deku's quirk as Alpha. And they don't really have a good understanding about it, but they just know it has something to do with pack mentality. Because whenever Deku started crying at one of the nurses, they said that they felt like they needed to follow what Deku was saying. Well, they felt like they had the urge to follow what Deku was trying to convey to them, which was not to take his blanket away. So they would categorize his quirk as a brainwash and super strength quirk. But that is far from it. Now, Inko might think that he might have a quirk like hers, because I'm changing her quirk to where she can essentially see in the dark, but she has to wear small goggles. She can turn it off, but it's hard. It's very blinding whenever she has a quirk on, so she doesn't use it very much. And Deku's dad, his quirk is still going to... I didn't think about Deku's dad. Let's just keep his... Let's say that his quirk is a training quirk, or an enhancement quirk. It's not a strong one, but it still enhances his body. So he would actually be like a personal trainer. Actually, no, I'm retconning that. Deku's dad still has a fire breath quirk, but he still works out of the city. Now then, as Deku grows up and gets older, he would learn more about his quirk. On the first day of kindergarten, kids would show up and they would start talking about what their quirks might be. Now, Deku would walk into the classroom wearing a pair of goggles, and people are confused by this, and they're asking Deku what his quirk is. Deku would just say that his quirk is Alpha. That is what the doctors called it. He would say that essentially he's like a pack leader for a werewolf, like for a pack of dogs and other things like that. So not only can he control animals, but he might also be able to control people. Now then, Bakugo doesn't believe this because Deku would have said he has enhanced strength and can control animals. This is whenever Deku would have immediately picked up a desk with a metal bar and immediately just break it by snapping it into each other. And after that, he would walk outside, and let's just say there was a stray wolf nearby. Deku would have immediately walked up to it, and it was growling at him. But as soon as Deku got on his knee and extended his hand, it actually warmed up to Deku and let Deku pet it. Now, teachers are freaking out about this because of what Deku just did, but this is whenever Deku would say that it's fine. Now, because of Deku's quirk, he would like going on camping trips because he feels more in tune with nature and being out in the wild. It's just something he enjoys. Now, Deku is he's around 4 years old, so around the time of kindergarten. During a camping trip, Deku gets lost in the woods, and he would be essentially raised by a pack of wolves. Now, whenever Deku got lost, Inko was actually trying to find Deku, but she would have died. Now, how she would have died is, since she can't really... She would have fallen and broken her goggles, and this is going to sound very dark. She would have blinded herself, and actually would have fallen off of a cliff. Yes, that is very dark, but I don't want to say something worse. Like eaten by a pack of wolves or ripped apart by a bear or something like that. So, let's just say that his mom died a certain way in the woods, and Deku was essentially left to be raised by wolves. Over the years, Deku would have... What he would have done is he would have done training in the woods and actually learned to survive. Now, one day, whenever he was out hunting and jumping through the trees and looking for food, he would have came across a campsite. And whenever he got close, he saw other people. But he smelled something really, really good. And since he was only very young, whenever he first got lost, he wouldn't know what a lot of sweet-style foods are, like a cake, a muffin, stuff like that. And his sense of smell, along with his hearing, everything would be better. Along with training with wolves, he can train his senses and everything like that. So Deku, whenever he walked up, let's say that this was a quirkless family, and Deku's around the age of 10 now. Deku would have seen everybody, and they would have looked at him. And this is whenever the father at the campsite would have tried to ward off Deku. saying that he's not supposed to be here. And Deku would try speaking English, but he can't. And they're calling him a filthy, like, they're calling him filthy, they're calling him names, they're cursing at him. And Deku's confused by this, and as soon as he opens his mouth to try speaking, this is whenever he would barely be able to talk. Because he's just been used to howling and growling and acting like an animal these last couple of years. So he's essentially almost feral. Now, this is whenever, from out behind this family, a bear would emerge, and Deku would see it, and he would just point at it. And this is whenever the family would get scared and actually start trying to ward off the bear, but this would make it very angry. So it would actually go to attack them, but Deku would have stood in front of them and actually scream at the bear. Now he's growling at it, and this is whenever the bear would actually... It would somewhat listen to Deku, but this is whenever he would walk up to it, let it get his smell, and actually calm it down and have it sit down. This is whenever he would sit down next to it, petting it. Now, this family is confused, and this is whenever they would realize that this boy has essentially been out here for a long time. And they would try to take Deku away, but it's not really working very well. Because as soon as they tried putting Deku in the car and taking him, he would have immediately just broken out. What I mean by that is he would have just ripped off his seatbelt and broke open their door and start running away. Now, they would get back to town eventually and call the authorities, saying that there is a young boy out in the woods. We don't know how long he's been out there, but he has been surviving, and whenever we tried talking to him, he wouldn't really speak. He was just growling and stuff like that. He was essentially talking like a child. Now, as soon as they would have said that, ow, this is whenever the authorities would have been notified, and they would have gone to track down Deku. Now, Deku would have actually been able to elude them and get by them, but he would eventually be drawn into one of the cities. And this is the city nearby UA. Now, what happened was Deku would eventually get away from them and have gone very deep into the forest. Now then, after that, let's say Deku has fur on, a primal knife made out of a sharpened rock, along with like a belt made of string, and a place where he can put the knife in. Along with that, he is also wearing a bear skin. Not the same bear he just met, but one he probably hunted down earlier. Now, after that, this is whenever he would have evaded capture and actually have gone into a city. Now, whenever he did go into the city, he would have probably been at night, so he would have taken off his goggles and wear them around his neck. He would have eventually seen a lot of crime going on and stuff like that, but aside from that, he's still only 10 years old. So he would have probably stopped a few crimes, do something like that, and actually be called a vigilante in the news. But people would just call him like an animal man because of the fur he was wearing. Now, Deku is in no stakes an animal man, but this is what they would just call him. Now, let's see. Let's skip 2 to 3 years later of Deku being a vigilante. Somewhat like that, somewhat in the woods. This is whenever they would have actually gotten somewhat tired of trying to catch this kid and call in All Might or some pro heroes like Aizawa. Now, whenever they do call in Aizawa, it's a bit of a mixed bag because he doesn't want to have to like take down a kid, but as soon as they would realize that he's probably one of the kids that went missing a long time ago, he would have actually probably stepped in. Now, after that, Aizawa would put together a small team. It would be Aizawa, Best Genius, Kamari Woods, and Recovery Girl. Okay. After putting his team together, they would have gone to go capture Deku. Now, Deku is around 13 to 13 and a half, 5 months before the anime would start. Let's put it that way. Now, this is whenever they would have spent an entire week looking for Deku in the woods, camping. Best Genius is talking about how being out here for so long has ruined his hair, this isn't good for his denim, and Aizawa is genuinely holding back the urge to strangle Best Genius. Anyways, aside from that, Kamari Woods is thinking that he really should have just stayed in the city. But being out here is nice. Now, this is whenever Deku would see them in the woods, and it's around nighttime. Deku would have been somewhat smart enough to... Let's say this was during the winter, because I know that their school breaks out in summer, so I'd say this is 5 months before the anime. Summer break starts in June. June is the 6th month, so this is January. Okay, I got it. This was January, somewhere in early January, so let's say it just got done raining. That's for a different what if. Anyways, after that, this is whenever Deku, he would have waited for their fire to die out. And Kamari Woods and Best Genius are talking as I was trying to sleep. And this is whenever they would hear cracking in the woods. They would have then tried to actually figure out what it was, but they can't really see very well. Recovery Girl is asleep also because she's old and sleeping is good for old people. I know my grandma sleeps a lot. She usually just watches TV and falls asleep a lot, so you don't really bother her. Anyways. I know my dad sleeps a lot. Yeah. Jesus, that was a long yawn. Anyways. This is whenever... Okay, wow, I need to cut this short. Deku would eventually... He would have killed their fire. And as soon as it was completely dark, Aizawa would have heard the commotion going on and tried to help them, thinking that this might either be a villain attack or it's an animal attack. So, that is whenever he would get his scarf and get out of the tent. Now, all he sees is basically a moving shadow in the dark. He would have lit his lantern, and he would somewhat see Deku's outline moving around them, but he sees a giant wolf. So he's thinking this might be like a wolf man, like a villain, or an animal with a humanoid quirk. So he would erase Deku's quirk And I know he erased Shigaraki's quirk, and he didn't make direct eye contact with it, so he would erase Deku's quirk. And this would actually blind Deku, because his eyes are a part of his quirk. This would blind him, and he wouldn't be able to see. So he just dropped to his knees, shrieking, and actually screaming, like an animal. And they would be able to tie him up, but they would have to tie him up in the denim Best Genius has, a lot of it, and take him back into the city. Now, that is where I'll be leaving this part off of, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'm going to be recording the Meliodas What If in a minute. Crap. Why do I keep yawning? Anyways, I'm going to be recording the Meliodas What If in a couple minutes, but after I record that, I'm going to be uploading it, and I might upload another part of this. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I hope you enjoyed. Because I don't want to put that one on the back burner. I don't want to put that one on the back burner, along with this one being my primary what if, like what I did for the Spider one. The Spider-Punk one. Speaking of which, I never really did get feedback if you guys want me to do a Into the Spider-Verse with Spider-Punk Deku. And just comment that below if you guys want Spider-Punk Deku, because I've somewhat been able to storyboard a lot of, well, not storyboard, but I've put together random parts of scripts for a lot of the what ifs I have written down, but I also still have my 10 quirks in front of me for Deku. So, if you guys do want me to cover those, well, not cover those, but cover Spider-Verse Deku and finish my Meliodas What If, please leave it in the comments below. Alright, you guys had an amazing day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Alright.